Every few years, you walk into a small booth. You make one mark on a piece of paper, then you go home. That is your democracy. For most of you, that is the entire extent of your direct participation in how your country is run. But 2,500 years ago, a city did something far stranger. They gave power directly to ordinary people every single day, with no one standing in between. What happened to that idea? And why did almost the entire world choose something else instead? Start with Athens. Around 507 BC, a reformer named Cleisthenes introduced a system that historians now consider the first large-scale experiment in democracy. The word itself comes from two Greek words, demos, meaning people, and kratos, meaning power or rule. Not power given to a king, not power inherited through bloodline. Power held directly by the people themselves. Here is what that actually looked like in practice. The Athenian assembly, called the Ecclesia, met roughly 40 times a year on a hillside called the Nix. Any adult male citizen could attend. Any citizen could speak. Any citizen could vote by a simple show of hands on questions of war, taxation, foreign policy, and law. There was no professional political class. No representative voted in your place. If you wanted a say, you showed up. Historian Josiah Ober at Stanford has spent decades studying how this system actually functioned, and his research suggests something that surprises people. Athenian democracy was not chaotic mob rule. It produced remarkably effective decision-making, partly because it pooled knowledge from thousands of ordinary citizens rather than relying on a small elite. Farmers knew about agriculture. Sailors knew about naval strategy. Merchants knew about trade routes. The assembly, in a strange way, functioned like an early form of crowd intelligence. But Athens had a darker side, and it is just as important to understand. Government positions, including jury duty and many administrative roles, were often filled not by election, but by lottery. Sortition, it was called. Citizens drew lots, and whoever was selected served. The idea was radical. Anyone could end up running part of the government, which meant power could not easily concentrate in the hands of professional politicians because there were almost none. And then there was ostracism. If enough citizens, sometimes thousands, wrote a single name on a broken piece of pottery called an ostracon, that person could be exiled from the city for 10 years. No trial, no formal charge, just the collective will of the crowd. Historian Sarah Forsdyke has written extensively about how ostracism functioned, less as a legal punishment and more as a pressure valve, a way for Athenian society to remove individuals seen as dangerously ambitious before they could seize too much power. It was democracy protecting itself, but with no due process whatsoever. The same crowd that gave you your voice could just as easily take away your home. This is the paradox at the heart of direct democracy. Total participation, total exposure. Your fate was always, literally, in the hands of whoever showed up that day. Now fast forward roughly 2,500 years. Nearly every functioning democracy today looks nothing like Athens. Instead, the dominant model is representative democracy. You do not vote directly on laws. You vote for a person, and that person votes on your behalf, sometimes for years at a time. Why did the world choose this version instead? Partly it is a matter of scale. Athens had roughly 30,000 to 60,000 adult male citizens eligible to participate. A modern country can have hundreds of millions of citizens. You cannot fit that many people on a hillside. Political theorist Robert Dahl, who studied democratic systems for most of his career, argued that direct democracy becomes structurally difficult past a certain population size, simply because not everyone can meaningfully deliberate together at once. So representative democracy emerged as a kind of compromise. Citizens elect individuals, and those individuals form legislatures, parliaments, and congresses that debate and vote on their behalf. It is less direct, but theoretically more manageable. Here is where it gets interesting, and where Athens and the modern world quietly converge. Consider any contemporary democratic election. A candidate campaigns, they debate, they make promises, and then millions of citizens, each one essentially performing the same ritual a single Athenian citizen performed on the Nix, raise a hand, cast a vote, and say, in effect, this person represents me. Whether the candidate in question is someone widely praised or fiercely controversial is beside the point philosophically. A modern political figure, Take Donald Trump as one clear example of a contemporary elected leader chosen through this exact mechanism, was selected through millions of individual acts of the same ancient impulse Athenians exercised on a hillside 2,500 years ago. The scale changed. The mechanism, oddly, did not. But there is a critical difference, and it is the difference that defines the entire modern system. In Athens, your vote was the decision. In a representative system, your vote selects someone else who then makes the decision. You are handing your political voice to another person, trusting they will use it the way you intended for months or years on issues you may never personally weigh in on again until the next election. Political scientists call this principal agent dynamics, borrowed originally from economics. You are the principal. Your representative is the agent. The agent is supposed to act on your behalf, but the agent has their own incentives, their own donors, their own party, their own ambitions. The further the agent drifts from your original intention, the harder it becomes for you, as a single citizen, to correct course. In Athens, correction was immediate, brutal, and built into the system. In a representative system, correction usually has to wait for the next election cycle. This is where the modern world tried something Athens never had: constitutional constraints, independent courts, term limits, a free press, checks and balances distributed across multiple branches of government. None of this existed in ancient Athens in any formal sense. Athenian democracy trusted the assembled crowd almost completely, and that trust occasionally produced catastrophic decisions, including, famously, the execution of the philosopher Socrates by a jury of roughly 500 citizens, voting by simple majority on charges that historians still debate to this day. Modern representative democracies, by contrast, generally distrust concentrated power, including the power of voters themselves, on any single given day. You get one vote once every few years, specifically so that no single emotional moment, no single crisis, no single demagogue's speech can instantly reshape the entire legal structure of the country. It is democracy with a built-in cooling-off period. There is also something Athens had that almost no modern democracy preserves: rotation. Many Athenian officials served for a single year and then stepped aside, often permanently barred from holding the same position again. Compare that to modern political careers, which routinely span decades. The same individuals, the same parties, sometimes the same family names, occupying positions of power across entire generations. Athenians had a specific kind of suspicion toward anyone who seemed too comfortable holding power. They believed, correctly or not, that power should circulate, not settle. So which system actually serves people better? Researchers studying both ancient and modern systems generally avoid declaring a clean winner because the systems were built to solve different problems entirely. Athens optimized for direct participation and rapid responsiveness, at the cost of stability and protection for unpopular individuals. Modern representative democracy optimizes for stability, scale, and protection of minorities, at the cost of direct citizen control over any single decision. Here, finally, is the part almost nobody discusses. Athens did not consider its democracy a finished achievement. They considered it a constant, exhausting obligation. Citizens who withdrew from public life, who stopped attending the assembly, who stopped engaging in civic duty altogether, were given a specific, almost insulting label: idiots, a private person, someone who cared only about themselves. It is the direct root of the modern word idiot. To the Athenian mind, disengagement from democracy was not a neutral choice. It was a kind of civic failure. Modern democracy asks far less of you on a daily basis. You can disengage almost entirely between elections and still technically remain a full participant. Whether that is a strength or a quiet erosion is a question modern political philosophy still has not fully resolved. Athens lasted, in its democratic form, for roughly 180 years before external conquest and internal instability brought it to an end. Every representative democracy operating today is, in a sense, still running a modified, scaled-up version of the same basic experiment those Athenian citizens began on a dusty hillside outside their city walls. The question they asked then has never actually been answered. It has only ever been asked again, generation after generation, election after election. Who, exactly, should hold power? And how much of it should you personally be willing to hold yourself? So you walk into that small booth, you make your one mark, and then you go home. The question is not whether that is enough. The question is whether you have ever stopped to ask why it looks the way it does, and whether the answer Athens gave 2,500 years ago still has something left to teach the system you live inside today.